Wow, Mordechai is here. No wonder you two want me to wake up late today. All right. This is exciting. With all these Jews here. So late. I apologize, guys. Yeah, I have to understand something. This is part of the script. Hashem always makes whatever is more valuable to always be more difficult.
Yes.
So basically, you're saying you left your keys in the house again and had to walk to mikveh?
And I wasn't here today to give me a ride from my house. So, and it would take him a little longer to pick me up from there. Okay, we are learning this Farbrengen from Tavshin Chavtes. And let's go to page, in Varmachos, is on page Yud Beis, Ois Vav. The theme of Parsha Shoftim has direct relationship to the theme of the month of Elul. The month of Elul is a time when Hashem accepts our tshuva. Unlike the second set of 40 days that Moshe Rabbeinu was on the mountain, where it says that Hashem was in a so to speak, tell the Jewish people in disfavor. From the first of Elul on, when Moshe invited Moshe Rabbeinu to come up the mountain on that Thursday, the first of Elul, and to stay there until the Monday of Yom Kippur, those 40 days are a time when Hashem forgave the Jewish people, and it's ready from the first day, as we learned yesterday. There is already this flavor of happiness and joy and mercy. And every year on this day we have this again. That Hashem forgives us with joy and accepts our tshuva. So this has relationship to Parsha Shoftim. How so? The whole theme of the book of Dvarim is tshuva. She'ela Dvarim. Oh, you're not looking inside? I'll do it outside. Ela Dvarim. In the book of Dvarim, Moshe Rabbeinu relates to the Jewish people a lot of rebuke, all the places that they've angered Hashem in order to inspire them to do tshuva. What's unique about this parsha is not that it's about tshuva. The whole book of Dvarim is about doing tshuva. It's about tshuva with simcha, tshuva with joy, tshuva that's accepted. It's in other sections of Parshas Dvarim, Hashem tells us to do stuff. For example, Hashem tells us, place upon yourself a king. When you tell someone to do stuff, they could do this with joy or without joy. Doing doesn't necessarily mean that you want to do it. But when we talk about giving is something that you give. A present is always given with a good eye. So the opening verse of this historic portion is, I give upon your gates judges and police officers. It's not something that you should do. It's something that should be a gift for you. Having judges, having police officers on all of your gates is something that's a gift. Primarily, the translation of the word doing in Judaism means to be coerced. Like it says in Beis Yosef, in certain situations, the Jewish court coerces people to give stuff. However, the language of nesina means that we're talking about a gift. Anyone who gives, the Talmud says, let's say someone sells you a house. So you don't know if they included various things in that sale. The Talmud discusses what's considered obvious as part of the sale, what's not considered obvious as part of the sale. When they give you a gift of the house, then they also meant the pool and the back house and the garage. And because when you give a gift, you give the good eye. The meaning of a good eye means excessive. When someone gives someone a gift, they don't just give the bare minimum, they give with a full heart. Therefore, they give more. So too, when it says in the Torah you should have judges and police officers upon your gates, which you learned that's the meaning of tshuva. Why is judges and police officers about tshuva? Judges means that you judge all of your gates, your seeing, your hearing, your thoughts, and your words. You put judges upon your gates. You evoke your inner parent and say, this isn't okay. You get angry at Sahara and you say, this isn't okay. And you get take control. You have a judge. And police officers, we learned, are about consequences. Let's say your inner parent raises its voice at your inner child and says, you need to get up for chassidus today. And your inner child says, I don't want to get up for chassidus today. So then you have to arouse your police officer and say, we know what's going to happen if you don't go up to chassidus today. And so that's what the Gemara says. That if the Yetzer Hara is not resisting your, Yetzer Hara is resisting your voice, remind him about the day of death. That's the police officer. So Hashem tells us, I want to give you judges, I want to give you police officers, which means that it's not just something that you should be doing, it's something that you should be doing with joy. It's something that you should be doing as if it's a present you want to give Hashem. When you do something as a gift to Hashem, you do this all the way. So that's the unique, that's the connection between this parasha and the theme of the month of El. El is about the king in the field, not just doing tshuva with the king smiling at you, you're smiling back. The theme of the month of El is tshuva with simcha. So therefore, it's also the indicated in the beginning of Parsha Shoftim, you should have a gift of police officers, you should have a gift of judges upon your gates. There's another way that Parsha Shoftim has a connection to the month of El. Shoftim, the meaning of judges is justice, judgment. Thank you. When we take care of whatever judgment has to happen here, then there's no reason for Hashem to take the matter into his hands. There's no judgment in heaven. And since there's no judgment in heaven, so all the guards at the door are taken away. And you're able to go right over to the king. There's a famous niggin that spells Zayda. You know this niggin. The father is alone in the forest. Where are my children gone? Hashem is, so to speak, alone, asking us to come home. And we tell Hashem, we want to come to you, Dad, but there's a guard at the door. Who's the guard at the door? Guard at the door is the Yetzer Hara and the accusing angels in heaven. And they say to the Eibusher that don't let him in. And the Yetzer Hara doesn't have a ceasefire. He has his gun to your head 24/7. So there's a purpose of the Yetzer Hara. That's why God created it, even though Hashem regrets creating it. There's something negative about it as well. But in the month of El, since the Torah tells us to take the justice into our hands, to put guards on our door, to put judges on our gates. So then by us putting judges on our gates and policemen at our gates, that makes it unnecessary for Hashem to put judges on our gates in heaven. In other words, since we're taking care of business and we're judging ourselves where we need to be, so there's no reason for there to be anyone stopping us. In other words, when you decide that you're going to judge yourself and take and use the Shulchan Aruch and carefully examine your actions and see where things have to be, so then that takes away the accusatory angels in heaven, which say you don't belong here. You're not allowed to come to the king. You're not allowed into the palace. The month of El is about the king being in the field. So by us taking care of the justice that has to be done in ourselves, that takes away all the guards at Hashem's door and lets us come in. Second line. This idea of placing judges and police officers upon your gates is not just something you have to do for yourself, it's something you have to do for other people as well. As the Torah says, you should put judges and police officers in all of your gates. All your gates doesn't just mean your own, it means all the Jewish people's gates. You should worry about what's happening in someone else's house. And the goal is that Hashem should have a home in this lowest realm. And therefore, it's not sufficient for you just to make sure that you're doing okay, but you should also, another Jew is struggling, you have to help them evoke their police officer and their judge on their gates. It says about Yaakov. Yaakov was challenged when he fought against Lavan and he fought against Esau and when he fought against the angel. And finally, the Torah says, after all of this, Yaakov comes home whole. Yaakov comes home complete. And the Talmud explains how was he complete. He was complete in his body. He wasn't hurt by Esau or the Malach of Esau. He was complete in his soul. He didn't learn from the ways of Lavan. Complete in his Torah. He was able to learn Torah despite all the challenges that he had. He was totally complete. So when a Yid makes an effort to put the judges, the police officers on his gates, so then he's successful and he's able to be victorious not only in himself, but also in his area in the world that God has placed him, and he's whole, not just in his body and his soul, but also in his Torah, but also in his money. Yaakov elevated all the sparks he needed to elevate, and therefore he's also complete in his money, which contains the godly sparks that he had to elevate in the house of Lavan through taking all of the wealth of Lavan. It says in the Jewish people left Mitzrayim, they left Mitzrayim with everything in it. They left Mitzrayim like a silo without grain, like a fish pond without fish. Why do we need two analogies to describe how we clean them out? So Kabbalah says, Jesus says that the grain is something which is above the ground, something you can see with your eyes. That represents the sparks of holiness which are coming from Alma Desgalia, from a lower world, from a world where there is a sense of self, where there is a sense of separation from Hashem, where it's not like fish, which are always in their source. Fish being in its source, being in the water, and to the extent that you look at the water, you don't see the water, you don't see the fish, you see the water. The representation of that spiritually is an angel or a soul. The world of Bria, which the world of Bria is described as Efsharis Matzias. It's not considered an existence, it's considered the possibility for existence. Because you can't really quantify the kind of existence the world of Bria, because it's always in a state, all the creatures, all the souls and angels in the world of Bria are always in a state of Tvekus to Hashem, always in a state of attachment to their source. So you don't, when you are in the world of Bria, you feel more your godly source than you feel yourself. That's the meaning of a hidden world. Hidden world means that the fact that there is a world, it's hidden. A revealed world means that the fact that there's a world is revealed. You feel the separate entity besides the Eibush. So in Mitzrayim, there were different kinds of sparks there. There were sparks in the world of the grain source, so to speak, kinds of sparks. And there were sparks from the fish pond kind of sparks. So we left Egypt, we not only did we take all the grain kind of sparks, the sparks in the revealed world, but also from the fish pond, meaning also the sparks which are coming from a world where you feel more the source of your life than you feel your life itself. You feel more that there's water than you feel there are fish. When we left Mitzrayim, we took all those sparks as well. The Rebbe Rashab was once eating a fish, and there's a bone stuck in his teeth, and he said the soul which is in the fish doesn't want to be elevated yet. That's why he's getting stuck in his teeth. So fish in general represent not just divine sparks from a hidden world, but the language over here is mitzuda, a mitzulis yam, the deepest part of the ocean. That means we're talking about the highest kinds of godly energy that was in Egypt, And the Jews left Mitzrayim, they took also the fish out, also the highest sparks. That's why it's customary to eat fish on the Suda Shlishis, on the third meal of Shabbos, Shal Shudis, because some souls of tzaddikim, their Gilgul, their reincarnation is specifically in fish. Again, because fish represent this relation, this reality of the hidden world where all you feel is the source. So just like when we left Mitzrayim, we took all the sparks out, the higher sparks, lower sparks, it was all taken out. And therefore, when the Jewish people left Mitzrayim, they took everything out with them. All of their belongings came out with them, and all the Egyptians' belongings came out with them. As it says in the Torah, they came out with their silver and with their gold. And that's also what's going to happen when Mashiach will come. Mashiach will come, Hashem will again give us the judges and again give us the advisors, as we had before when the Beis Mikdash was standing. We'll actually be able to put judges and police officers in all of our gates. Every shevet, every tribe will have these judges, including the 13th gate. The 13th gate is a part of Mashiach. Mashiach will have his own ownership of the land of Israel, as it says in the Sefer Yecheskel. So Mashiach will come, it will be a complete redemption. All the sparks of Kedusha will be taken out of Mitzrayim, out of the world, and therefore we're going to leave this exile with great wealth. Okay, I want to do the next part of the Farbrengen outside. That was the end of the third sikh. This is the fourth sikh of this Farbrengen. Regarding judges, which is the name of this week's parsha, there are different levels. There are some things which one judge is sufficient for. There are some things you need to have 3 judges. There's some things you need to have 23 judges. And there's some things you need to have 71 judges, which is the Great Sanhedrin. A judge is also called a king. Just like it says about a king, that a king leads the Jewish people where they need to go. And therefore a king is supposed to be someone who has fear of heaven, because he has to lead the Jewish people according to Torah. Like it says about David HaMelech, that David HaMelech would discuss Torah with Yoav, his general, and the reason why Yoav was successful in war was because David was learning Torah. And David HaMelech would spend time every day answering questions of women. Women would come and bring to him their bedika cloths, and he would check their bedika cloths to see if they were allowed to be permissible to their husband. He was the Rav, he was the rabbi. So he wasn't just involved in purifying women to be allowing them to return to their husbands. He also was interested, thereby he also caused the Jewish people to reunite with the husband of the Jewish people, meaning Hashem. And that's the reason why a king has to always have a Sefer Torah with him. As it says in the Poskim, he has to have a personal Sefer Torah. The reason why he has to have a physical Torah is because Torah is supposed to be by the king, not just something in his thought and speech, like other great rabbis in our history who've never stopped saying words of Torah. So they had Torah all the time, like a rabbi, it says they never stopped saying words of Torah. By the king, he has to also have a physical Sefer Torah, a Sefer Torah written on a parchment. And since the king is also a judge, so in Parsha Shoftim, we have the commandment of having a king, which is a biblical commandment. So when a king, the inyan of a king, when you have the inyan of a king in a full revelation, in perfect revelation, then there is a victory over the entire world. Not just, we're talking about the way it's meant to be according to Torah. When there is a full revelation of the monarch, according to the way it is according to Torah, so not only is there the dominion of the king over the world, but it's also his dominion is through peace, as it was by King Solomon. About Shlomo Melech, the Torah says he sat on the chair of God. The Talmud says just like God is the king of the higher realms, King Solomon sat on God's chair. And in King Solomon's time, it says the moon was always full. So he was a man of peace. His name was Shlomo. There was peace in his days. And people from other countries came to him with gifts. But in other times when the monarch, the Indian of the king of the monarchy of the Jewish people wasn't fully revealed, there was need for wars to make it happen. So that's the second job of a king, not just to lead the Jewish people. Second job of a king is to make wars. So right after the mitzvah of appointing a king, in this Torah portion, we have the law of war. The Torah says not to be afraid of your enemies. So this is connected to what the Rebbe was discussing in 1969 at length, that a Jew is not allowed to be afraid of a non-Jew. And if a Jew is afraid of a non-Jew, he empowers the non-Jew. Like it says in the Talmud about the court cases that are done, that whenever you have a court case, you have to go to the Jewish court, not to go to a non-Jewish court. Even if the non-Jewish court has the same rules as the Jewish court, you have to go specifically to a Jewish court, because you're not supposed to place you're not supposed to be afraid of a non-Jew. You're supposed to take care of all of your life with the Jewish court. Anyone who leaves the Jewish court and goes to a non-Jewish court, says the Talmud, he denies God. He first denies God, then he will deny Torah, and further, there's no reason for a Jew to be afraid of a non-Jew, because the Talmud says the Jewish people are the most chutzpah nation. We're the most brazen nation. So even when you're in a scenario where it makes sense to be afraid of non-Jews, and therefore you don't have to tell us that we're brazen unless there's a reason to be afraid. So even when there's a reason, it would seem that you should be afraid. The Torah says that Jews are brazen. How much more so if the Torah says when you're going out to war, don't be afraid of the non-Jews? How much more so should you not be afraid? The Torah tells you specifically not to be afraid. In general, a Jew shouldn't be afraid of a non-Jew. How much more so if God Himself is telling you don't be afraid? But practically, the Rebbe says we see that people are afraid of non-Jews. Even if there's no reason to be afraid, Jews are afraid of non-Jews. And the question is, why are they so afraid? Jews are the most chutzpah nation, the most brazen nation. Why do they frighten the non-Jews? The answer is that it says that a neshama, it has that one of the reasons you're allowed to leave a war, and you're allowed to say that I'm not going to fight in the wars, but if you're afraid of something. What are you afraid of? You're afraid of the virus that you've done. So just like it says that a Jew may not go out to battle because he could become afraid because of his virus. So when your neshama is afraid of virus, when a person's made mistakes, that causes the neshama to be frightened because of the things he's done wrong. That trickles down to psychology in his mind, and he becomes afraid of non-Jews. His neshama's fear of virus, because of the mistakes a person has made, in other words, the mistakes that we make cause us to be frightened of a non-Jew. Like the previous Rebbe said, that the reason why a Jew gets hungry for bread is because the neshama is hungry for the sparks of Kedusha, which are in the bread that you need to elevate. But every Jew has sparks of Kedusha he has to elevate. So if we would merit, we would feel our thirst for the godly spark. Instead, we would just feel hungry for food. So in a similar way, regarding the fear of a Jew, why a Jew gets afraid of a non-Jew, the real reason for this is because he's afraid of his own sins. But his animal soul doesn't feel the sins. Animal soul feels, I'm afraid of this non-Jew. And the Torah says, if you're afraid of a non-Jew, what should you do? You should go home. You shouldn't go out. You shouldn't go out to war. This is, by the way, there was mentioned parenthetically, it's possible that you're hungry and it's not your neshama thirsting for the godly sparks. It's possible that you're hungry for something which isn't kosher. So that's obviously not a spark that you have to elevate. But if this is something which you need to live, the reason why you have that hunger for the thing that you need to live, that's coming from your neshama's. Hashem could challenge you also. You could feel you're hungry for something your body doesn't need. That's possible. You could be challenged by your animal soul, and you could be confused and thinking that you're hungry for something which your body doesn't actually need. But real hunger, the things that you do need, that's because your neshama is yearning for the godly spark which is in the food. So why is it there's a fear of non-Jews? It's because of the fear of your own inner sins. Okay, we should stop here. Bottom line is not to be afraid. When you're afraid, Hashem says, we're chutzpahdik, we shouldn't be afraid. They was referring to Jews in Israel about their being afraid of giving away land, and what America will say, what the Arabs will say. And they was referring to how the Knesset is trembling in the face of the big, our uncle in Washington. And Jews shouldn't be afraid. L'chaim.
I'm Rabbi.
How's life in the fast over there?
It's all right. It's kind of trafficy.
A great day, a great day, reserve.
Oh, yeah.
This Ekwan the whole time?